handling the epidemic of COVID. So it goes on and on. So where would you get people who work hard, save money, and invest their money, and they're putting their money into an honest, productive effort? Do you think they put money into this? It's all done because the money is indirectly controlled. So they force these insurance companies to pay for it. Then the insurance companies get into trouble and they get a bailout. And if it's a drug company, they get their bailout. So it's really corrupt, and the system is corrupt. And the only thing I'm just sympathetic to, you don't want to drag every single person into it because over the years I've met a lot of good docs, but once again it's neglected. They don't understand or care, and all of a sudden the government gets ahead, and that is our biggest threat, is the undermining of the prevention. They know what to do. What did they do here? They immediately took that website down, off their website. A little bit too little, too late though, but at least there was a reaction.
Yeah, I think it's really important that you do make a connection between this and COVID, because in this she's bragging, hey, we're going to make 40K on each one of these surgeries. This is a top surgery. This is going to be great. Well, remember back during COVID, the hospitals got a bonus if they put people on vents, so they put a lot of people on vents. If they killed them, they get even more money, so they close a lot of them. So you see a lot of this happening. The other thing to see about what Matt Walsh uncovered is the viciousness against people who objected. Let's put this next clip on. This is the next tweet in the series of tweets that he said. Vanderbilt was apparently concerned that not all of its staff would be on board. Dr. Ellen Clayton warned that, quote, conscientious objections are, quote, problematic. Anyone who decides not to be involved in transition surgeries due to, quote, religious beliefs will face, quote, consequences. Very, very terrifying.
It's okay to bring up the religious thing, but that should be an academic thing, because not everybody has the religion they're endorsing, and if you can object that way, the principle is liberty. You want to defend the liberty that protects the church and religious belief, but you also want to protect, children age 13 being mutilated by people who want to make a buck with taxpayers' money. So I just don't think that is the justification, but I don't object to it because they did use this, for COVID and taking shots and all, and they're making a point, but I always want to make the bigger point. The principle is that neither one should be handicapped on both sides of this. We have the right to speak out. But that is, once again, it's a attack on the First Amendment. And I've said so many times that if we lose it, and we are desperately coming close to losing it, and if we can't speak out freely without intimidation and loss of income and loss of jobs and all, our job is about 10 times worse, if not more. And that's what we are facing, except we're in the business of trying to wake people up in a proper way to what's going on. And we do see signs of it. In a way, this was a quick waking up by the people at Vanderbilt. Yeah, but that's late. But it happened. Matt did this tremendous job on this, to do this. So I'm alerting people to what's happening. I still believe in the good instincts of people, but I also believe in the dominating efforts by governments using force and not promoting liberty, pretending. They constantly, just aggravate me to know him. The further you are away from the Constitution, the more they preach how those conservatives, they don't follow the Constitution at all, and they come up with all these things. And they're the ones who promote all this wokeism and that medical care system, and the ones who promote this transgenderism, and saying, it's we who are defending the right of people to go through transgenderism, and the other people who object, they surely can pay for it all.
Well, obviously, people that are of age can do whatever they want. They can dress like an Eskimo or a giraffe if they want to, but we're talking about kids. And here's a little bit more. I think there's a couple more tweets from this series that Matt Walsh did. He said, in case the objectors hadn't got the memo, Vanderbilt unveiled a program called Trans Buddies. The Buddies are trans activists from the community who attend appointments with trans patients, monitoring the doctors to guard against unsafe behavior, such as misgendering. Basically, these are the Stasi types who would go along and make sure that nobody tells these kids, hey, you might want to wait, you might want to double think this, because you're going to do something that can't be reversed. No, you're going to have this thug in that picture, and people like whatever it is, reporting them to the authorities.
Isn't that similar to the principle they take that, once they decide that we have to be careful that nobody tells the truth on the internet, you have people protecting you, have finding the information, cooperating with the FBI, and closing them down. On the internet, you have people protecting you, finding the information, cooperating with the FBI, and closing them down just because they do want competition and speak. You have to monitor. They always have. Big government is authoritarian, and it just breeds more and more government, and more authoritarianism, more violence. And I think what we're witnessing now is this is coming to some type of a conclusion. And of course, we're on the side of having liberty prevent the problems from coming. And I still believe there's a lot of people out there that want that. But I tell you what, it's getting tough. And I do think, the Marxists definitely work on chaos, and they think they can rebuild it into be a better Marxist system than the Soviet Union did. Oh yeah, sure, they're going to do that. But I think there will be chaos. But I also think that we ought to look for the opportunity. Take, for instance, homeschooling has homeschooling is still there. It's private schooling. And I bet there's been a boost in attitude about public school system. And we should call it government school system, because look at what's happened.
Yeah. Well, here's the last couple of tweets. We didn't do all the tweets, and I encourage people who are on Twitter to have a look at all of them. But let's look at these are a couple of concluding tweets from Matt Walsh. So let's review. Vanderbilt got into the gender transition game, admittedly in large part because it is very financially profitable. Then they threatened any staff members who objected and enlisted a gang of trans activists to act as surveillance in order to force compliance. They now castrate, sterilize, and mutilate minors as well as adults, while apparently taking steps to hide this activity from the public view. This is what healthcare has become in modern America.
That is so true. And of course, on the right side, there are more and more people now questioning, what it is. But the large number of people aren't going to be intense on this. That's why I think exposure to it is trying to keep people out of government that promotes these ideas with with a gun. And it also prompts me to move in the direction of saying, well, to get people in there and get them to pass by laws, and also clean up the FBI and the CIA, it's not going to happen. We still have to change the attitudes of the people, and that will happen. But it's going to involve everybody trying to do their part. And every day I read or get a message from some new person who just came on the scene, has started their own little program. Yeah. So there's a lot of effort being made there, and I'm sure they're feeling very frustrated in getting that message out, but would be an agreement. But then, so I think Matt did us a big favor on bringing this up and waking up people, because I think I read one blog that said, who should be surprised? Yeah. You know, this is the way we've been going. So it's something that is going to be around for a while. Like I started the program off with this whole principle of murder and violence. It was there in the law, trying to recognize the more principled higher law, which is a nonviolent system. And yet the people who don't believe, they don't have any consciousness on this, because they do follow this fantastic belief. Well, why worry about it, right? Well, you can't do that. There's no law for everybody. There is no such thing. There's no objective evidence that murder is always a bad thing to do. They can't come at it. And yet way back thousands of years ago, they recognized property and trade and money very early on in history. So the system has been around a long time, and I'm sure it's had its ups and downs. And right now we're on the surface, things are very, very bad. But I'm saying underneath, there's an ember in there that's burning, that's waiting to burst out. So we're sick of those. We want a whole lot less government, but trust the people. Believe it.
It's generally accepted in society that teenagers are not capable of sufficiently exercising judgment to take a cigarette or to take a drink of alcohol. Yet somehow these very same teenagers are viewed as having sufficient judgment to take life-changing mutilation of their bodies, which cannot be undone. There's something really wrong with this equation, I think.
Well, if you go one step back, because you do, and you try to dissect it, stories of people who have suffered a lot from bad circumstances, raised in the slums. And how many very rich people today, came out of the slums without a family, which means you can do it on your own. But we also have to realize that with large numbers, these kids are going to come out because they don't have the parental guidance. And even that is an economic fact, because maybe the mother has to work too for financial reasons to see how much more that's going to go on with this inflation, which is again dishonest, evil, deceptive system that rewards the rich and makes the poor poorer, and that's adding to our chaos as well.
Remember Jeff Dice at Mises, when he talked at our conference, he said that inflationism is terrorism, state-sponsored terrorism. I think that's not overstating it. Well, speaking of violence, we're going to do a little quick thing on California, which I'd be happy to never go back to, even though I grew up there. This is Michael Snyder via the blog, Zero Hedge. Violence in California reaches epidemic levels as our society rapidly deteriorates all around us. See the next clip, because here is a quote from it. He says, the state is losing its luster. And troublingly report labels physical and sexual violence endemic in California, a statewide epidemic. According to a new annual report from the California study on violent experiences across the lifespan, violence statistics have significantly increased since COVID-19. The report conducted by scientists at the University of California School of Medicine reports that 1 in 6 Californians, 18%, experience either physical or sexual violence in just the past year. That is hard to believe.
It's representing the fact that people believe that it's to their benefit to promote these things, that violence is a tool. The socialist, Marxists, they can't live without the violence. But there's all forms of this violence too. They talk about the violence that people have to resist to have, get them out of our way. You have to have a couple principles, and you probably don't need many more. Like I said in my reading now, there were a couple principles. Our 10 Commandments have, that was early on, and they were pretty basic, of what the rules would be, and that was a long time into that game. But theoretically, probably not from the government itself, But for it is people always tell me, if you do that, you didn't have a bed, you didn't have this, it's just total chaos. And I said, but is there any chaos now? Show a picture of the streets of San Francisco, and that's chaos. But what will happen if we have a lot less policing by government? Well, maybe there would be individual policing if they had a moral principle. So the only way it would work, and I was looking at all the quotes, I used to think it was just, probably Franklin, Washington, maybe quotes about, a moral society. You can't use these hospitals if you don't have a moral society. And that's the same way with freedom, outside of the borders. If the people aren't at the point where, the one thing that I'm not allowed to do, and one thing that we have to stop doing, is I can never aggress against a person and have a pretty good understanding what aggression means. The government turns out now. Sanctions, that's not aggression. Controlling trade, running a counterfeit operation, and writing thousands of regulations and taking over the medical system, that's not aggression. As individual, aggression can be pretty well defined. Think of what a society would be like if you had no aggression. You wouldn't have counterfeit money. You wouldn't be allowed to do this, and it would never perfect, but if you were moving in that direction, believe me, what I told people when they challenged me, I said, what would the income tax, and also make sure that we had honest money. Oh, that sounds like a pretty good idea. So you would have to get people to understand that using force to have their way in social matters, religious matters, economic matters, or our government and foreign matters.
Yeah.
You know, the world would make some progress. Maybe we would be moving in the direction of civilization rather than away. This kind of stuff that we're talking about today, unfortunately, I see this as stepping back from civilization. Something has to be done, because I do believe that the resumption of the improvement of civilization is possible. It's been pretty steady over the years since the time of enlightenment. People moving in the direction of using their liberties, and things have improved in spite of the fact that so much is done. It's all good and bad. You develop a nuclear power, and you can obliterate the world, or you could light up the world and take it over. So that exists, and that's a principle that people have to deal with.
Speaking of nuclear power and blowing up the world, the last one that just briefly is Biden's speech to the UN General Assembly yesterday, where he made the point that Russia's bad because you can't take a country's territory by force. And whether it's something to that, the rest of the world listened to say that with their jaws hitting the ground, because that literally is America's foreign policy in one sentence. And let's listen to a little bit of what Biden said at the UN, so you can get a sense of how he put it. We can do that video clip, that second to last. Here we go. Here we go. On other countries. Well, here's the same Biden a few years before that. Let's put on that last clip. Unless there's a body double, this is the same Biden that we remember so well. On that last, here we go. Here's Joe. Here you go.
I just want to know what you're suggesting, because back then, when I was in your position, I was suggesting we borrow Belgrade. I was suggesting that we send American pilots in and blow up all the bridges on the Drina. I was suggesting we take on his oil supplies. I was suggesting very specific action. This is interesting that we never.
And they think that the rest of the world doesn't notice this. And also, when he was vice president, of course, we're still occupying a third of Syria and stealing their oil. So that's okay, I guess.
And it is done by intimidation if it isn't with the troops on the ground. But no, we use it, and we've been in a power position. But that's what's coming. That's what's happening. It's coming to an end. And that is, we have control of the reserve currency of the world. There's a challenge there. How about our foreign policy? It doesn't seem to be all that successful. But he doesn't want to use power. Our government. See, the first thing is I think our obligation, more as citizens of the country or as a member of Congress, we should be dealing with, you know, what we're doing wrong, rather than saying, oh, well, what we need to concentrate now or making sure that the workforce is fairly treated in China. You know, it's impractical and it doesn't fall under the authority. It won't work. But there are people that, you know, a coup is force. Nobody even knows about it, basically, except our viewers, about 2014. You know, how we were getting involved in that. And then there's the intimidations and the threats and the denial of the use of funds. And you know, every once in a while we'll give back some money that we had locked down. And the people are told, why are we subsidizing this kind of, oh, because we stole it from 10 years ago. We're just giving them back a little bit of it. So it's a mess. That's what needs to cancel a policy like that. So.
Well, speaking of canceled, I'm going to close out the call. Put up that next clip. Again, a reference to our conference in November. Shut Up, Cancel Culture, and the War on Speech. And I'm going to make an announcement today, Dr. Paul, because we just heard back from someone who's going to be speaking, and I'm very excited about his appearance. And I think Texans will especially know this name, but he's certainly very, very well known, and that's Del Bigtree. Del Bigtree is a filmmaker, a film producer. He is he's a commentator. He has a talk show, extremely well known. He made the film Vax, which was a big film. People are talking about it a lot. And we're not necessarily having him to talk about his views on vaccines and what have you, or COVID, but because he was canceled from most of social media, because at the time he was challenging the narrative, the approved government narrative on COVID. Well, it turns out he was pretty right on basically most of the stuff he was saying, but he was canceled in silence. He couldn't talk to him. So we're going to hear about his experiences about being canceled by the medical establishment and by the government. So Del Bigtree will be with us on November 5th. And we're going to be talking at our conference in Lake Jackson. I'll put a link in here for you to get your tickets. You're not going to want to miss this. Dr. Paul?
Very good. I'll be looking forward to that. I believe we shared a program one time. It was on this program. So this is very neat that we will be seeing our conference. And I'll be anxious to see more of our supporters there. And I'm very pleased with the way things are going in spite of the direction. Today I was a little more upset than usual, but maybe a little bit of that is justified, because I think it's necessary that we pay attention. I want to always narrow it down to the basic problem, and what is the principle you're violating. A lot of people say, well, Ron, we have this bill here, and we want to, you know, what we've done is, it was $100 billion, we cut off $1 billion, and so we want you to vote for it because it's less than it would have been. And I don't buy into that, even if it's down to a small percentage. I told people who argue with me that, I said, if you have a bill level. And they say only 5% of this is giveaways to special interest. Well, 5%. Well, let's see. 5% a year. How long does it take to eliminate, a person's freedom? That's what they put up. It has to be the principle. It will never work out that way. There's always people who are going to angle and get around it and change it and that sort of thing. But the principle is that authoritarianism and the dictatorship of the majority vote, that's where we get into trouble. And they live and die the majoritarian business that as long as you get 51%, you can do whatever you want. And then they are the same people who just lecture hour after hour about they being the super champions of the Constitution. And yet at the same time, even though they talk about the Constitution, what they do is they build and endorse things through shenanigans and coups and special interests and FBI assistance, that whole thing. So we need a lot more honesty in government, but we'll do our best to present the honesty in economic policy and also moral policy. And I believe that's the best we can do. And the only thing, as far as I'm concerned, that we can do is change people's minds, and that will change the world. I do want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.